However, during conflict, the British regular, like the members of the 10th Royal Veterans Battalion, most likely would have been using a weapon much like this. And so to tell you more about that, I'll turn it over to Cameron.
All right, thank you, Alex. Now, the weapon used by British soldiers during the War of 1812 is an India pattern service musket. Now, these are also known as the third version of what is commonly known today as the Brown Bess. And there are a few differences between the India pattern as well as the earlier versions, the Longland pattern and the Shortland pattern. The main differences being the India pattern is a little shorter, as well as having significantly less brass ornamentation down the stock. And the reason for these two things is essentially after several years, even a few decades of combat across Europe, the British treasury is starting to run a little bit low. And because of that, they can no longer afford to pay their gunsmiths. So, well, as they do certainly still need firearms, the British Army then turns to the East India Trading Company, which itself has its own private army, and it buys the India pattern musket from the East India Trading Company, and then equips their soldiers with those muskets. Now these are flintlock smoothbore muskets, which means, well, a few things. The first of which is because it is a flintlock, it uses a flint and steel mechanism at the back of the musket to provide the initial spark. Essentially, you have a piece of flint attached to the hammer, which, when you pull the trigger, will slam down, striking the piece of steel called the frizzen. And what happens when flint strikes steel? Sparks. Absolutely. The sparks will then drop underneath the frizzen into the flash pan, which will be full of black gunpowder. Now this gunpowder will ignite, the sparks falling onto it, making a bit of an explosion, which will travel into the main body of the musket through a touch hole, setting off the main charge, sending your musket ball down range. Now, this is a fairly long process as far as ignition processes go. There are a fair amount of things that can go wrong. Perhaps the flint is not sharp enough, or the frizzen is rather worn out. In either case, you might not get those sparks enough. Perhaps the flash pan is wet, or it's a very windy day out, and while the powder gets soaked or